A student uses AI to summarize a difficult reading before writing their response. Is that cheating? A new survey says students genuinely can't agree on where the line is. Research out of a major university just confirmed that AI detection tools can't reliably answer that question for you. So if catching students after the fact isn't a workable path, what is? Hello and welcome to another episode of AI in the Classroom Daily, a podcast helping educators make sense of AI without the hype. I'm Dan Cogan-Drew, and I use AI as a thinking partner in preparing each of these episodes because I think the best way to talk honestly about AI in education is to work with it openly. So today I want to dig into a question that sounds simple on the surface. What do students actually think counts as cheating when it comes to AI? A report published this month by Oxford University Press surveyed nearly 4,000 teachers across the UK, 3,100 in a structured survey, and over 700 more in qualitative school studies conducted across 20 schools. Before I get into this study, a quick disclosure, this report was published by Oxford University Press, which develops and sells educational products and has an explicit AI framework for school resources. The researchers behind the qualitative component are affiliated with Oxford's Educational Research Forum, which is independent, but the overall publication reflects an institutional perspective with a commercial stake in how schools approach AI. It doesn't make the data invalid, but it's worth knowing where it comes from. And because the study was conducted in the UK, the specific numbers should be held with some geographic distance for educators in the US. That said, here's what the data shows. When the students were asked which uses of AI they consider cheating on their homework, only 44% said having AI complete the whole thing crosses the line. That number probably will not shock you, though I have to say, I was a bit shocked. But what I find more interesting is the spread on the other end. 19% of students said that even asking an AI tool for tips on their homework counts as cheating. 9% said using AI in any way at all is off limits. So you have a population of students that spans nearly the full range, from those who think nearly anything goes to those who think getting a hint is a violation. This connects directly to a framework I introduced earlier in this podcast back in episode 2 from educator and author Tony Frontier. His book, AI with Intention, describes the concept of fidelity, the alignment between what a teacher intends an assignment to measure and what the student understands they're being asked to do. His example was a student assigned 2 readings to synthesize and write about. Student found the text difficult, used AI to summarize them, and then wrote the responses themselves. They didn't think they were cheating. They thought the assignment was about the writing. The teacher thought the assignment was about the reading. Nobody said otherwise. That gap is the fidelity problem, and the OUP survey data is essentially a picture of that same gap at scale across thousands of students on the question of AI specifically. Students who think tips are cheating are probably being cautious in the absence of clear guidance. Students who think completing the whole assignment via AI is fine may not be cavalier about academic integrity. They may genuinely not understand what the assignment was designed to develop. Both things can be true at once. Now, the temptation when you see data like this might be to reach for a detection tool. If students can't be trusted to know the line, maybe technology can monitor it. But that path is increasingly untenable. A peer-reviewed study published this month in the journal Computers in Education evaluated 13 different AI detection tools, both commercial products like GPT-0 and open source models, against a data set of over 280,000 authentic student samples drawn from real coursework, theses, and engineering code. The researchers tested how well these tools performed across task types and disciplines, and then tested how easily their detection could be defeated with basic editing. The finding, with a hybrid editing strategy, essentially having a student make some targeted revisions to AI-generated text, 88% of AI-generated content evaded detection. The study also found that detectors performed significantly worse on short-form assignments and STEM writing than on long academic papers, and flagged technically structured writing as AI-generated even when it was written by humans. The researchers concluded that detection tools are not reliable enough to support high-stakes academic decisions. Now, it's not a new concern for this podcast. We've discussed the false positive problem before, including the Palo Alto case, where a high school student faced disciplinary action based on a detection score that turned out to be contestable. And we've talked about Vanderbilt University discontinuing its use of Turnitin's AI detector. What this study adds is systematic empirical evidence across a large and realistic data set. Detection as a strategy has hit its ceiling. So if students aren't receiving clear guidance on what the line is that they cannot cross, and if technological detection can't reliably enforce it after the fact, that brings us back to where the actual work is, the design of the assignment and the communication around it. What does that look like in practice? So I think for classroom teachers, the most direct version is when you assign work where independent student thinking is what you're actually measuring, you need to say that explicitly, not just in a policy that lives in a syllabus, but in the setup of the assignment itself. For example, this task asks you to work through a difficult text on your own. That struggle is the point, not a step towards the point. One sentence like that can change the stakes of the conversation before they escalate. Students who don't understand why independence matters on a given task aren't necessarily trying to get away with something. They may just not know. In episode 56, we talked about Nick Podkolitsky's framing that the goal of learning isn't ownership of a product, it's formation. The question isn't, did the student write this? It's, did doing this change the student? That question resides in the design of the task and it has to be communicated. It can't be assumed. For instructional coaches, I think this is a useful lens when you're reviewing assignments with teachers. Ask where a student actually has to generate their own thinking, not just produce a response. The answer shouldn't be hard to identify. The confusion students are showing on the OUP survey about what counts as cheating is often feedback about communication at the task level, not evidence of bad faith. When you're reviewing an assignment, add a question to your protocol. If a student used AI for part of this, would they know they'd done something that undermined the point of the assignment? If the answer is unclear to you, it's quite likely unclear to them. For district leaders, the OUP report notes that only about 15% of students said they've received enough guidance on AI use. I think that's a policy gap, but it's not only a policy gap. Rules that prohibit AI use without explaining the instructional reason behind a specific task ask students to comply without understanding. That's a fragile arrangement, and it puts teachers in an enforcement role that they didn't sign up for and can't reliably perform, especially now that detection tools have a documented ceiling. The more durable path is building a culture where teachers are supported in communicating the purpose of their assignments clearly, and where the students understand that the boundaries around AI aren't arbitrary, they reflect what learning actually requires. So one last thought here. The OUP survey asked students something qualitative too, why they didn't want to use AI on a task when they had the option. Some of the answers I think are worth sharing here. One student wrote, "It wouldn't be actually what I truly think. It would be a vague interpretation of what I've told a robot to expand on." Another wrote, "AI doesn't have opinions, so it can't write what you are thinking and what you believe." I think what this shows is that students have some intuition about what's at stake. The job isn't to convince them that thinking matters, it's to design conditions where that intuition is fundamental to the work that they're actually given. So, as always, questions for you here. Have you had a direct conversation with your students about why a particular assignment is one that they need to do without AI? Not just that they have to, but have you had that conversation about why they have to? And when you see students drawing wildly different lines around what counts as cheating, what do you think that's really telling you? As always, thanks for listening. I hope you enjoyed this episode, and we'll see you next time.